Hey guys, I'm John P.
And I'm Callie Lewis. Thank you guys so much for joining us for Talk Mobile. This week we're talking mobile gaming. But today, I want to know if mobile gaming can scale.
Well, Phil, how does multiplayer gaming really work on mobile? Is it there? Can you do it?
Pretty badly. You have all sorts of constraints. You have data constraints, you have bandwidth constraints, you have constraints for a lot of people in the hardware. We can talk about all these new devices all we want, but especially for me in the Android world, there are so many older devices out there, especially became popular over the last year and a half, 2 years, I think, that just are an entire generation, if not two, behind on the hardware side. And you don't want to forget about them. Developers don't want to forget about them. The companies paying for all this stuff don't want to forget about them.
And one of the other problems is our times are so different on mobile. If you're sitting at a console, all your friends, you've made an appointment. It's sort of a set thing. But on mobile, who knows when you're around? In the original multiplayer games, you had to coordinate with your friends the same way and play. But now they're doing asynchronous multiplayer. So Real Racing 3, John can race, and it records his race, and then when Callie's ready, it'll replay him in the race, and you can race against him. And it's not as great as doing it live, but at least,
Isn't that like cheating?
Well, no, but at least it kind of frees you to play when you want.
I think, and that's like the important thing, that's sort of the compromise we have to deal with right now is asynchronous, which I don't mind personally, but I know some people do want the real live time stuff. So what we see is a disconnect between what the consumers want and where the technology is. So it's like what Phil was saying, the technology is going there, but we have to wait for processing the servers to come online because there's all sorts of issues. Microsoft brought this up recently, which was, it was something we didn't take into consideration, which is what happens if you're playing with someone live, but then there you drop off. Is it fair?
I have to charge my phone. And that's something you don't have to worry about with consoles and computers.
Given those constrictions, what can people do to make MMO games better on mobile gaming?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, it's going to have to, I think, take time for the infrastructure to get built up with servers, new technology for 4G, LTE to become more ubiquitous. These kind of things, it's going to be a slow evolution. And, like I said, some people are going to just have to deal with sort of asynchronous game playing for a while.
Kevin, would you do it? I don't want to play one. Like, if I'm going to play you live, you got to be there.
I want to be live too. Yeah, asynchronous is like a band-aid fix, and I think maybe what has to happen is take some of the really popular console titles for MMOs, figure out how to work in a mobile component to them. So when you're away from your console, you can still participate.
Still mine your goals.
Somehow, yeah, you can still do something remotely on your mobile device. And the thing is, once the hardcore gamers move a little bit on mobile, start doing this, they'll probably solve all these problems.
But doesn't it depend on the type of game? For example, chess has always been turn-based.
They're asynchronous, turn-based games, and that, works just fine.
Real-time strategy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know there are games, and I've played with some of you guys, where it doesn't matter if you're on Android or if you're on iOS or BlackBerry or any platform. You can play across the platform. How important is that?
Right now, you're just going through an evolution. Everybody's getting their games to market as fast as they can, but if we think the future, it has to go across.
BlackBerry supported Unity, right? That was one of the big things out of the gate.
Unity, Marmalade, it's lots of cross-platform.
But I would actually say, though, iOS is so massive that it can benefit from having a game on there in of itself. That community is so huge that developers can actually sort of do well. It does benefit them.
And exclude everyone else, just kind of ignore everyone.
Yeah, until they sort of get around to it. No, I agree. For the consumer, it's not good. And ultimately, it does need to go cross-platform, but developers that's why they always go for iOS first, and then goes to Android, and then it kind of goes down the line. But they can sort of benefit from that.
We're starting to see that shift around, too. I talked to a lot of the game incubators and that, and there's been a lot of people lately who've been focusing on Android first, just because there's so much competition in iOS too.
Sure.
So if you're building something you want to break out, start with somebody else first. And we see with Windows Phone and BlackBerry also.
And if you have a unifying structure like Unity, it's a lot easier for developers to then write once and sort of
deploy everywhere.
And that makes the most sense.
But Phil, doesn't Android have a bad reputation amongst developers for people wanting to pay for games and apps?
Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with there's just some crappy apps out there, and I think a quality app's going to rise up no matter what.
In terms of the future and evolving and scaling, how do the gaming networks need to evolve themselves?
They have to open them. I mean, like Facebook, you're either constrained to your platform, Game Center, Xbox Live, or you're constrained to your social network, Plus Plus. I forget there's another one on Android that's really big, Facebook. And I think those walls have to break down. It's good for manufacturers to have those walls, but for us, we need a good cross-platform
you have
network.
to talk about the big game developers too versus indie developers. I mean, actually, BlackBerry's taken a lead in this. If you go into GitHub, they put out BlackBerry Game Time, which is an open source cross-platform 3D mobile gaming framework for iOS, Android, and BlackBerry, and Windows support also.
Yeah, and it's there's pros and cons. Obviously, some of the hardcore gamers prefer like the Xbox Live model with the achievements, game score.
That's what they want, right? The rewards.
Right. It's very important to them, while for other people it's not. But it is a hindrance for this cross-platform thing. So you have this idea that a lot of consumers just don't care about what platform it is and want to just play against their friends. But you have the competition with the companies, and they have the proprietary system.
Like, why wouldn't Microsoft just make Xbox Live everywhere? Just own it, because then everyone else would kind of be. It's almost like BlackBerry with BBM. If they put it everywhere, everyone would use it.
I think they want to, but it's a matter of standards, and so they have very strict requirements. And I would argue that they're probably too strict, especially for the results that are given aren't that good. And so you have the system that you have to meet these certain requirements, and until they get rid of that, that's the way it's just going to be.
Okay, guys, that's it for today's show.
Remember, do leave a comment. Let us know your thoughts. Chime in. These guys are paying attention. We're paying attention. We want to hear from you. And we'll see you back tomorrow. Don't forget to join us.